Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. After a highly bullish and buoyant budget which was presented by the Finance Minister, with some even equated with the legendary 1991 budget presented by Dr. Manmohan Singh, it was expected that because of such a buoyant budget, because of such bullish expectations created by the budget, the consumer sentiment will look up in a substantial manner for the better. It was expected that the confidence of the common man in his own economic prosperity and future will certainly look up because of these kind of budgetary provisions. In order to measure the change in the mood of the consumer and the households, the CMIE, which is the Center for Monitoring the Indian Economy, conducted its routine consumer household survey, such as to compare the pre-budget sentiment and the post-budget sentiment of the common households of the normal common consumer. The findings of the CMIE survey are that all the rosy expectations which have been presented by the government in the matter of India's economic growth in the coming financial year and all the bullish, optimistic sentiment that the government has tried to create because of the budget has not cut ice with the common man. The common man does not stand convinced by these budgetary provisions. The findings of the CMIE are that the overall index of consumer sentiment has gone down by 4.2% after the budget was presented. In fact, that compares very contradictorily with the stock market indices, with the stock market valuations, which went up by 9%. But overall consumer sentiment of the households went down by 4.2% after the budget was presented. It further finds that the index of current economic conditions and the index of consumer expectations in India measured by the CMIE both went down, both fell after the budget presentation. It says that more number of respondents said that they expect their income levels to worsen in the coming 12 months. Lesser number of respondents believed that their business and financial conditions will improve in the coming year, notwithstanding these budgetary provisions. And even the long-term expectations of the consumers and the households and the respondents over a 5-year period were equally bad, if not worse. These were the findings of the CMIE survey that was conducted on consumer households. According to us, these findings of the survey reflect the overall mood of the consumer whose incomes have depleted and have taken a further hit on account of the corona on an already slumping, sagging Indian economy. Before we come to those specific reasons why the consumer sentiment has dipped despite a bullish, expansionary, expenditure-oriented budget presented by the government, before we come to those, let us look at the relevant facts as we see in the matter of analyzing the ground reality of the common man. We will not be guided by those claims of the government which say that green shoots of recovery have set in. We will go by the ground realities that are felt in our day-to-day reasoning and analysis of the Indian economy. The first one is that despite some kind of recovery that might have taken place, there are still many manufacturing sectors in particular which are contracting, and they have contracted right up to December 2020. The data for January 2021 is not out, but the data for December 2020 says that 14 out of 23 manufacturing subsectors that were measured, they have shown a contraction in their output in the month of December also. So thus, the overall output in the economy continues to be on a downer. The second is that up to 31st December 2020, which is for the first 9 months of this current financial year, the overall manufacturing output in the country has gone down by 13.5%. The same figure was a positive 0.6% in the same period last year. In 2020, it has gone down by 13.5%, and that of course reflects on the overall sentiments of the consumers and of the producers. The other fact to be borne in mind is that recovery in the economy continues to be uncertain and fragile. The demand upsurge that we saw in the months of September and October were primarily on account of festival and pent-up demand, and those are gone. And the consumer has yet to come back and resume normal spending, of course, for want of confidence and for want of incomes. But the fact remains is that recovery remains fragile, demand has not come back. With demand, we come to the next point, which is corporate profits, which went up in Q2 and Q3 of this financial year. They've gone up because of cost cutting. They did not go up because of consumer demand going up. They did not go up because of volumes of turnover going up. Profits went up only because of costs being cut. And the costs were cut primarily on account of jobs being lost. Once the costs go up and the demand does not come back, corporates are not going to show this kind of a performance, and thus it also reflects in the overall confidence of those very corporates who may have shown profits in Q2 and Q3. And the next point that we would bear in mind when we talk about relevant facts is that jobs lost have not come back. To us, joblessness continues to hang in the air. This is the foundation. These are the real facts which are impacting the moods of the consumer, and the budget has not been able to give it a U-turn. We therefore come to the reasons why, according to us, the sentiment of the consumer has not improved or gone up. It has not been boosted by a buoyant and bullish budget presented by the government. The first reason why the consumer is not confident or is not convinced is that the recovery in the economy which is presented by the government in the budget is primarily dependent on increased capital expenditure and increased general expenditure by the government. The government says that in the coming financial year, the overall capital expenditure of the government is going to be the tune of 5.54 lakh crores, which is an increase of 34% compared to last year. Even the general expenditure of the government is expected to go up by 15.6% in the coming financial year. Thus, recovery is largely dependent and contingent on government expenditure. But the fact of the matter is that we have always experienced a huge gap between promise and performance as far as the government does. The government is promising an expenditure. The government is promising huge capital expenditure on infrastructure, etc. Whether that will materialize or not is a matter of question mark. And that has to do with the consumer not having confidence on the performance of the government. The second reason why the consumer is not convinced has been the government's failure to deliver on its promises, whether it was the promise of return of Achhe Din or any other. Not only were those promises not delivered and forgotten, but on the other hand, we also had draconian measures like demonetization coming in. With this background, you do not expect a consumer to be convinced and dancing in joy just because the budget may have made some kind of bullish expectations and provisions. The next is economic growth has gone down on a year-to-year basis. Businesses have been decimated and downsized. Livelihood has been lost. Jobs have been lost. None of this has come back. Nothing really has been done to get back all the growth that we lost. The jobs that were lost in the pandemic are yet to come back. And with this current scenario, where the government has not been able to even restore what was lost, you again do not expect the consumer confidence to change merely because of a budget pronunciation. The hard reality of the matter is that moratorium and restructuring has given some kind of a respite temporarily to the borrowers, particularly in the MSME and the informal sector. Because of these, which is moratorium and restructuring, cash flows of these units has not come back. Their payment liabilities have only been deferred, and there remains a deep sense of nervousness that if cash flows do not come back, there is going to be an imminent default by all these borrowers, and that is impacting sentiments of the borrowers constantly. Unless cash flows of businesses and individuals do not improve, you cannot expect a mere budget pronouncement to do some kind of a magic on them when they have imminent defaults staring in their face, without incomes, without livelihoods, without cash flows that are needed in order to service such debt. While that is a reality, the other reality is that today the households and the consumers do not have easy access to funds from banks and other institutional sources. How would they be able to take care of their emergencies whenever they come is yet another matter that keeps on lingering, and that has certainly not been in any manner resolved by the budget. The fact is, lockdown has eroded incomes, it has eroded savings, it has eroded wealth, and it has eroded the confidence of the households and the consumers, and they are not spending. Until that is not restored, the consumer confidence, the consumer outlook is certainly not going to improve. The larger picture, according to us, is that the entire recovery that is being projected by the government is largely contingent on government spending, and that is where the problem lies. While the expectation is that the government will spend, on the other hand, the private sector continues to be a fence sitter and has not perked up its own investments. It continues to wait and watch. And while this happens, the other smaller sectors like the informal sector and the MSME sector, they continue to suffer. In this reality, sentiments of households and consumers are not going to improve overnight. They will only improve by and by if we see that the government is delivering its promise on capital expenditure, on infrastructure projects, on boosting the government's own expenditure, such as to put business, livelihood, money and jobs in the hands of the consumer. If that takes place, then you could expect some kind of an improvement in a durable manner taking place. Just because the budget was a bullish announcement, that is not going to be enough to take away this deep-rooted uncertainty and nervousness from the minds of the households, from the minds of the consumer. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing, that news should remain free, because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here, you can be our supporter by paying Rs 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying Rs 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our Super Supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.